So if you work with control systems, there's a good chance at some point in your career you're going to have to work with some equipment that's obsolete or out of date. For example, take this Mitsubishi PLC from the late 90s and early 2000s. So if you wanted to program one of these back in the day, you needed to use one of these proprietary connectors. Now at the time, most laptops will have either had a D-sub connector on them or a 9-pin serial port. So they did this converter so you could take it from the proprietary connection to D-sub or D-sub to serial. So the problem arises nowadays that most laptops do not have a 9-pin serial connector on them. Unless you're forking out thousands for something a little bit special, your everyday engineer's laptop is not going to have a 9-pin connector on it. Take my laptop for example. I've got 2 USB-C connectors and 2 USB 3.0 as well as a HDMI and an Ethernet port. So if I get called out to a site that uses one of those PLCs or has one of them PLCs on the site somewhere that I need to work with, we've already established my laptop can't connect to it. So what do we do? So that's where one of these devices come in. This is a USB to RS-232, 485 or TTL converter. So in one side of it, it accepts USB B type and it has an RS-232 9-pin serial port on the other side. If I need to do any work with RS-485 or maybe even TTL, it's taken to terminal blocks. So by plugging in a USB with USB B type on one end and USB A type on the other, I can just hook that straight in to my laptop. Then by plugging in the same 9-pin serial port into the converter, the laptop now has a connection to that PLC. Now these converters are fairly cheap on Amazon. If you do any work with PLCs, I highly recommend getting one. Get one of these too, which is basically a USB hub which takes USB-C and gives you a few extra USB 3.0 ports. And as a bit of a bonus, I would also say get yourself one of these, which is a USB to Ethernet adapter. The amount of times that I have to change the IP address on my Ethernet port on the laptop, then when I want to connect to the internet, I forget all about it days later and the laptop doesn't connect anymore. By having one of these, I set the manual IP address on this, I leave my IP address of my embedded Ethernet port to automatic DHCP, and whenever I plug this in, this has got a manual IP address set to it. It's the same every time and it allows me to connect to any modern PLC over Ethernet.